Welcome to the SPIRITWOKE podcast, podcasting from the beautiful city of Stillwater, the birthplace of Minnesota. Are you going through a spiritual awakening? Do you wish to learn more about continued spiritual growth and want to meet others who are on a similar journey? We hope that this podcast and its community can be a meaningful resource for you. The SPIRITWOKE podcast welcomes special guests from around the globe who share personal stories of their awakening journey, along with details of spiritual abilities they've developed along the way. So buckle up and get ready for this exciting episode. And now, here's your host, Adam Dins.
Friends, welcome back to the SPIRITWOKE podcast. On this episode, the first episode of 2020, how exciting. I am thrilled to welcome an incredibly talented soul to the podcast, and we're going to talk about spirit guides today. And let me just say her name before we get too far into it, Loni Palm. So Loni Palm is going to be talking to us about spirit guides, and she's going to talk about her ability to connect with spirit guides in an incredibly special way that allows her to create art, and it's beautiful. And if you're listening to this on like iTunes or iHeartRadio or any of the other podcasting platforms, go to spiritwoke.com and you'll find Loni's podcast there. And go to the page, and you can see an example of one of a piece of Loni's work. So Loni did a spirit guide reading for me, which was incredible, and she did a painting of the spirit guide, so you can find it on that page. So again, just go to spiritwoke.com, and if you don't see Loni's episode there, just search for her name, Loni, Loni, Palm, Palm. And before we kick off tonight, I just want to tell you, if you're into meditation, check out SpiritWoke Meditations. So SpiritWoke Meditations is an album of guided healing meditations recorded by yours truly. You can purchase the entire album or order each track individually. So check out spiritwoke.com/meditations. I've got lots of information there. And just a little bit about Loni before we kick off. So Loni Palm is a psychic medium who specializes in readings connecting people with their spirit guides. She uses her gift to create one-of-a-kind acrylic paintings around the spirit guides that she sees. Loni also creates what she calls goddess paintings, where she paints women as their own inner goddess in a more collaborative process. And those paintings are so beautiful. I've seen them on her Facebook page when I've stalked her work, and she does incredible stuff. And so, Loni, welcome to the SpiritWoke podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's very great to be here.
It's nice, it's the perfect time of the year to record podcasts because it's like negative 100 outside. Yeah. And so nobody wants to go outside anyway. So we just sit inside and record podcasts.
Exactly. It's a great, everyone should do it.
Absolutely. And so if you're in a nice warm area and you want to be on the SpiritWoke podcast, just come up to Minnesota for a while, and somewhere between October and April, and that's all you're going to want to do is record podcasts. It's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Loni, I'm thrilled to have you here, and I'm thrilled. Spirit guides to me is, I've always been fascinated by spirit guides, and my family. Well, I guess to say my dad's side, we're definitely not hippy dippies by any means, but my mom's side of the family kind of is a little bit, and my mom and my uncle both practice transcendental meditation, or my mom used to. My uncle, I think he still does a little bit. But I remember when I was younger, my mom always used to tell me about her meditation experiences and how she had a Native American spirit guide, and she was always just kind of, she'd always just kind of talk about him. And of course, I didn't know anything about what a spirit guide was. I was really young. Yeah. And I kind of forgot about all that stuff until later on when I started getting more familiar with spirituality. And I guess I always call it hippy dippy spirituality. But and so, and connecting with my spirit guides through meditation, and, we've talked to another fantastic guest about spirit guides, but I've always been like, so fascinated by spirit guides. But before we dive into that topic, because we're going to talk a lot about that tonight, Loni, would you be cool telling our listeners a little bit about your spiritual awakening experience, maybe what sparked it, and let's start there.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. It's kind of funny because, trying to think about this and trying to figure out what sparked my sort of spiritual awakening process, it was hard for me to pinpoint. And I think it's because it wasn't like this big moving experience. It wasn't like I woke up one day and was like, I am spiritually awakened now. It was kind of a gradual thing. I think I grew up in an environment where it was really encouraged to be connected to myself, to be connected to the energies that were around me, just to be very aware of my surroundings and aware of energy and aware of healing and things of that nature. My mom's also a psychic medium, and she's an author, and she writes books, and she's just amazing in her own way. And I grew up very close with her, so I think she was just an amazing, wonderful person and a great resource to kind of keep me on that track, I guess, of those natural abilities. I think we're all kind of born with this openness and this ability to connect. And as we get older, we get kind of ingrained in society and what we're supposed to be doing and how we're supposed to think. And I think we sometimes lose some of that. But luckily, I didn't have to do that. My mom kind of encouraged me to stay very open, and I kind of have had this spiritual awakening process sort of throughout my life. I think I've been awakening kind of this whole time in different ways. And I kind of think in a lot of ways we're all sort of continuously awakening. So, but yeah, for me, it wasn't a pivotal moment. Like, I don't have this beautiful dramatic story. It was just sort of a kind of a gradual thing. So I got kind of lucky in that department, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting to hear, our different guests' experience, because that's typically the first question I ask our guests is tell us about their spiritual awakening experience, because I feel like, everyone, part of the reason we have the Spirit Woke community is, when people are going through an awakening process, they can come here and find community. And, I think it's easy to compare your own spiritual awakening to somebody else's and say, like, wow, like for me, when I went through my experiences, or began the spiritual awakening process, I didn't have, the fireworks and I didn't see a bunch of cool stuff. And so I just went through this intense healing process through meditation, over a course of a couple months. And I was like, oh man, I'm missing out. Like, I didn't experience any of that cool stuff. But, it's like you talk to other people and it's like, oh, okay, well, you did this and you did that. And it's kind of cool to kind of see the tapestry of the different spiritual awakening, processes that are out there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, some people, there's some really incredible stories that I've heard. And I think I'm very blessed to be able to have the experience and the opportunity to connect with people and hearing their stories kind of in a similar way as you are, I'm sure. But yeah, there's some really incredible awakening stories out there, and I'm always moved and always kind of just astounded. And everyone's different and everyone's unique, and however it works is the way that it's meant to be, I guess.
Yeah, that's the truth. I wonder, like, in your past life lineage, if you've just sort of evolved and awakened over your past lives, so that in this life you were kind of just continuing the process of where you were in a previous life.
Oh my gosh, I certainly hope so. That's a great. I never thought of it that way. Wow, that's some to think on right there. I'll have to kind of ponder that and see if I have any connections to that, because that's definitely an interesting thought.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, how past lives kind of interweave. We had a guest on a couple of weeks ago, and she's coming back on again. I think actually our last episode of 2019, Jenny Mcdaniel, who she is a psychic, and she is her specialty is in past life readings. And
oh, cool.
Yeah, so she and in fact, you can check out her. She has an episode on the podcast. Her and a dear friend, Mandy Elam, who is also a psychic, and they talk a lot about past life regression or past life readings and past lives and what they are and how they work. But we were on a call once, just talking as two friends, and I was lamenting to her. I'm like, I'm just so, at the time I was like, I'm so fixated on this mystical experience. Like, I want to have these mystical experiences. And she goes, oh, well, I'm seeing in your past lives, the reason why that's the case is you've been a mystic many times in your past lives. And it's so fascinating when, like, I've had a couple past life readings, and I've also gone through a past life regression with a hypnotherapist, or that takes you back through hypnosis and you actually see a past life. And it's so fascinating because, like, I don't know, like I always envision past lives as when you see one, that it's just like watching a movie that you don't really identify with because,
Yes.
that's how I always pictured it. But when I went through, even just whether it was a reading or it was the regression, I learned so much about my current incarnation, and why I behave like I behave, and maybe some of the lessons that I'm here to learn, because many of them were present in my past lives. And it's just fascinating to how all that works together.
Oh my gosh, it's so interesting to see like kind of the continuation of our souls. Isn't like we always kind of like think that it's like, okay, this life was this one thing and we put that in a box, and then this life was this other thing and we put that in its own box. And it's I think past life regression is so helpful to kind of acknowledge that we're always on this journey that's, it's not really linear, but it's kind of it's building. It's always kind of growing into something else, and every life is connected and every lesson is connected throughout different lifetimes. And our souls are just, it's so interesting to hear more about it because we're so complicated and at the same time so simple, if that makes any sense at all. But it's so fascinating to hear because we're just always on this journey throughout these lifetimes. And yeah, being able to connect with that is such an incredible resource.
Yeah, you are so right on about that. Oh, we could have a whole conversation about past lives. So,
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about past lives. We're here to talk about this. We're here to talk about spirit guides. And so, Loni, tell us in your experience and sort of in your, what you've come to know about spirit guides. Like, what are they, and how do they work in our lives?
Yeah. So I've been working with spirit guides, professionally 5 years, but really my whole life. I think that's when I started taking on clients and being like, okay, this is what I do. This is how it works. This is, the whole process. But really it's kind of been a gradual thing that I've been doing on and off throughout my life. And from my understanding of working with them, they're just basically these energies that decide to kind of follow us through our life. They're here to teach us certain lessons. They're sort of there to be, I always kind of joke because it's sort of like we have this little posse that follows us around. And, my people will talk to your people is something that I like to say frequently, because it's really how it is. It's kind of like having a publicist and having a manager, but really it's like each guide has its own sort of specific skill set that it brings. And whatever lessons you're meant to be learning in this current lifetime is sort of the guides that you're attracting and drawing to you. And, through working with them, I found that we always think that there's like these energies that are distant from us and separate from us. But I've always found how close to us they all also end up being. Like, oftentimes we have past lives with them. Sometimes they're ancestors or distant relatives or family members or friends. It's really, really intriguing for me to see just who ends up showing up in a reading, and from where they're from. The world is such a big place, and sometimes I see energies that aren't always from this realm of existence, which is kind of a treat for me because that doesn't happen very frequently. But it's just such an incredible thing for me to be able to experience and for me to be able to share with people. So that's why I paint it too, because I can only explain it so much until I'm like, okay, I need to show you what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and I feel like, when you're talking, when I've had people tell me about, or talk to me about my spirit guides, I want to know what, because we're visual creatures, right? Like, if I can't see what it looks like, I don't, like, it's not real to me,
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like in marketing too, like when you create a logo or something, you want to have a face, if possible. People recognize faces and appearances more than they would say like a logo. There's just something about the face that resonates. It's just part of our human nature. How do spirit guides work with us? So, I definitely know personally for me, when I want my spirit guides help, I'll ask, and usually it's usually when I want something or things aren't going my way. And I guess that's when you would ask, say, for the help of a spirit guide. But then there's also like this concept of like, because that's so this is maybe a bit of a loaded question, but in that case, sometimes I feel like that's the ego. Like, hey, reaching out, I need your help, blah, 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 blah. But
Sure.
there's also another part of me that believes that our soul knows when we need help as well, even if our conscious, our ego self, our human self doesn't necessarily recognize that. And so I guess my question for you is, how do spirit guides work? And when we do call on them for help, is it the case that sometimes our soul will call out for help without our conscious, human body being aware of it?
Yeah.
Okay, I could keep rambling on, but I'm going to let you answer the question.
It's so funny how it works, because I feel like, every individual is different. Every spirit guide's different. They're always here for different reasons. We often come in with a main team, I find, and this main team is connected with us through, many lifetimes. And oftentimes their souls know us and our souls know their souls. And sometimes we're their spirit guides and vice versa. And, I find that every spirit guide has a different skill set that they offer us. So sometimes, I find that if someone's an apprentice, for example, and they're learning a new skill, a spirit guide will step forward and help them through that process. And they're only there to help them with that specific skill set. Sometimes guides will step forward and help you through very big life lessons that will take you a lifetime to learn. And they're with you your entire lifetime, and sometimes multiple lifetimes, until you really get that lesson pegged down, because that's just what they happen to be really, really skilled at. I always kind of explain spirit guides acting as kind of like teachers, like when you graduate junior high school and sometimes you move on to, high school, and then you get this new set of teachers. So I always say that we have kind of a main team that's with us, and that main team is, has been with us for multiple lifetimes, but we also have some guides that kind of step in and act as more temporary guides. And those are for more sort of, I don't want to say simpler lessons, because that sort of makes it seem like it's small and insignificant. It's not. Every lesson that we learn is important for our souls to grasp and to kind of understand and have. So those temporary guides that step in to help us with specific lessons. An example of a temporary guide would be one that helps you through grief. Oftentimes those guides can be with us, for however long that grieving process for us personally will last. And, every individual is different. That can be 2 weeks, that can be 25 years, whatever it is for you. So yeah, I think definitely a part of our human nature and our egos, sort of wants to call them in when we're having, a problem, because we're like, oh my God, like this one thing is happening. And like, I just need my guides to help me figure it out, because I want to get it down. I want to understand it. And I want to move on. And I want to be happy. But at the same time, I think our souls are, very, very wise. And sometimes, there's this higher self that sort of knows what we need before we consciously know what we need. I don't really think it's disconnected, but it's connected to us, but maybe we don't always consciously know it. But there's always a part of ourselves that understands and knows when we need that assistance. So I totally think that there's like a higher self sort of calling that's like, all right, like I'm going through this specific lesson. I'm going to call in my spirit guide SWAT team to sort of swoop in and help me figure it out. And then, it gets stuff done for us.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's it's powerful, and so what do you say to people who come to you and say, I ask my spirit guides for help all the time and I just don't seem to get an answer?
Oh, okay. I have had this happen before. It's so funny because I think, oh gosh, I mean, they're always answering us, and maybe there's different ways of them communicating. Sometimes they send us signs and we don't always recognize the signs or know what they mean. So having somebody that, is a reader, whether it's me or someone else, or maybe just sort of developing that skill on your own independently. I always say that you alone should use your own discernment, no matter who you're reading with. But they're always sending us signs and signals, and having somebody that kind of can interpret that can always be really helpful and sort of help you recognize what those signs and signals are. Sometimes they come to you in dreams. If you're truly convinced that they're not communicating with you, I often recommend that sometimes there's some spiritual blocks that we may have. Maybe we have old belief systems that are kind of keeping us from receiving that assistance. Maybe there's some fear there. Maybe there's some blocks that we're putting on ourselves. Some old energy, some baggage. Sometimes we have guilt for seeing spiritually, which isn't always good. So we want to make sure that we clear that. But yeah, it really depends on the person. There could be a number of things that are affecting that. But I always think that our guides and the energies that are around us are kind of, they're communicating with us all the time. I mean, the universe we're all connected, the stars and each other and energies. And I guess it's a number of things, and it just depends on the person.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you bring up the concept of like, having blockages or I guess more specifically belief systems, which I think can act as a block in a lot of ways, and I've found personally, I coming into the hippy dippy spiritual side of things later on in life, earlier in my life, I've had quite the evolution. I was born into a Jewish family, and my family wasn't religious per se, which kind of was good in some ways because it allowed me to sort of explore other things without feeling like I was being sacrilege.
Yeah.
And so I converted to Christianity when I was 17, and I became a hardcore Bible thumper for many years. So I was one of those. So
Okay.
yeah, and I was one of those, but sincerely, because I always sought God. Like
Oh, of course.
my intention was to know the truth. I wasn't looking for something to make me feel better about myself or to be a part of a community. It was really I always had a thirst, to understand and to know God, and so
Yeah.
I became extremely devout, and I truly believed a lot of the things that were being taught, behind from the pulpit, and what I found, it's I think it's still I think for me it's still a struggle, because even though I've gone through this spiritual awakening process, and I'm continuing to go through it, and I believe in a lot of these things, and I've even experienced a lot of these things. I still think there are these belief systems that I've carried with me from those days of just thumping the good old book that that keep me from experiencing this spiritual, redundant use of the word experience, but experiencing the spiritual journey fully. So I understand that comment very loud and
Absolutely.
clear.
Oh my gosh. And there's truth in every religion, and that's the beauty of it, and I think spirit guides, they tend to be more of a modern kind of concept. And I think they take place in different religions as well across the world. But yeah, I think that's one thing that's kind of cool for me, is that I've worked with people of all walks of faith, and they all have spirit guides. We all have energies, and just beautiful energies that are guiding us throughout our lives, regardless of our belief systems. But when it comes to connecting, for sure, there's definitely a sense of like, oh my gosh, like I can't connect with my guides unless I'm, talking to a priest, I'm talking to, somebody who can connect with them for me. But ultimately, we are parts of the universe ourselves. We are parts of the cosmos. Like, we connect to ourselves, and we can connect to any energy we choose. And it's important for us to kind of acknowledge that we don't distance ourselves too, and that we have the power, to connect with energies that are around us. And that's really kind of a beautiful thing.
Yeah, for sure. And even people who have the belief, even if it's a deep-seated subconscious belief that
Yeah.
contacting a spirit guide or talking with a medium or a psychic is somehow sinful, and 'cause
Right.
I think that tends to be a really big block for people who are coming out of a more strict denomination of any religion, right? That
Oh
you
my
just kind of
gosh.
feel like tapping into this energy. There's something wrong with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've definitely come across that a few times. And that's where kind of diving into those belief systems can totally help clear that up.
Yeah, so that's powerful. So, I think, those of you guys listening in who have come from other, religions or faiths, that, this was it's kind of taboo to explore this type of thing. Definitely interesting to sit with, because if you're feeling like you can't connect with your guides in the way that you want to, or other areas of spirituality, it could very well be that there are some some of those belief systems. I know I still have some of them that they're not fully ironed out yet.
We're human beings. We're not perfect, and we all have belief systems, and we're all kind of on this path of healing and growth. And I think as long as we're kind of aware and working towards it, that's all that matters. No one's going to be like tomorrow, like we're going to be like, oh, all my beliefs are completely cleared. It's definitely a gradual process.
Yeah, and it's part of what makes the journey so interesting. I think the second guest on our Spirit Woke podcast. He's one of my dearest friends from high school, but he's now a brain doctor. He's an MD, and
Whoa.
yeah, really smart guy. And he has a really interesting story. His name is Dr. Elias Druckmann, and like me, he was born into a Jewish family, and he converted to Islam, and.
Oh.
Yeah, and I believe like through his journey in Islam, he started he came across sort of the mystical side, because and I share this story because he was sharing with me that almost every religion, and this goes to your point that how there's a lot of truth in all religions, right?
Yeah.
So his perspective, and it's not a perspective, it's the truth, is that almost every religion, there's Christian mystics, there's Jewish mystics, there's Islamic mystics, there's, every ancient religion has some level of mysticism, and a lot of those, that mysticism comes from experience, mystical experiences, and they're so common. I shouldn't say they're so common, but they all have so much in common. All the mystical belief systems from across all of the religions.
Absolutely. And, I think even on my own, and I'm not a doctor, and I'm not I wouldn't call myself a mystic or anything like that, but just through my own research, my own kind of experience, the more that I learn about spirit guides and the more that I learn about spirituality, the more that I discover that at the end of the day, we're so connected, and there's so much commonality between everything. Everything is really kind of, it's all kind of achieving or trying to achieve the same goal, which I think is just incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Have you read any of Alan Watts's material?
You know what? I have not. And that's not the first time someone's recommended it to me. I think I have to actually dive in and start reading that.
Yeah, there's actually a really great book. It's an audio book, and I'm cheating. I'm opening up my Audible as I'm speaking to you now. But I'm looking at my library because just because the title of the book's a little bit long.
Okay.
I guess maybe it's not a little bit long. It's called Out of Your Mind. And it's Alan Watts, and it's basically like 13 of his lectures. It basically covers everything in his library, which is really cool. But he's got this really cool, and it's not just his philosophy. There are a lot of spiritual philosophers and ancient, or not ancient religions, but Buddhists and various other sorts that believe. And Alan talks a lot about this in his lectures, that we are the universe experiencing itself. And
I love that.
And in fact, I love the way he talks about it, because he essentially says that the universe, that source energy, that whatever we refer to God as, for me, I don't mind saying the word God, but but essentially it's the universe playing hide and seek with itself. So it's this game of play where when the universe incarnates as us as humans, and we're all the same because we're all that fabric of God, of the universe, incarnated in this physical form, or as an animal, or as a plant, or as whatever. It's all consciousness.
Yeah.
And the universe incarnates as us, and then it forgets that it incarnated as us. So it hides. It's hiding from itself. So it can experience life as Loni Palm, as Adam Dintz, as Scrappy the Boston Terrier, right? And and just experiencing all of these things, and then when it's ready to awaken, it does, and we go back, and we come back again, and it's this beautiful there's so much beauty in that, and I love that concept of just being. As you say, we're all so connected because we're all made out of the same fabric.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, I'll definitely have to read this book, because that's so kind of in alignment with what I feel and what I've kind of been thinking for so long. And I'll have to definitely see more of his research and expand on that.
Yeah, you and we should talk offline a little bit too sometime about sacred medicines as well, because there's some pretty amazing experiences of feeling that oneness and experiencing that oneness with sacred medicine. So we should talk about that sometime. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know everyone listening's like, no, talk about that now. But we're not here to talk about that now. We're here to talk about spirit guides. So Loni, again, I mentioned earlier that, and you've mentioned that you're able to see, not just communicate with our spirit guides, but see our spirit guides. And I can share that, obviously you connected with two of my spirit guides in our in my reading, and then I'm anxiously awaiting to post the acrylic that you did. But it's just incredible to me, your ability. And so how did you like did you paint before? Were you a talented artist before you painted spirit guides, or like did you talk to us a little bit about that whole process, and like how did it come that you started painting spirit guides?
Thank you for the compliment. Well, it's funny how it sort of happened. It really kind of just fell into my lap. I have been painting my whole life. My mom kind of likes to joke. She says she gave me a paintbrush when I was 2 and I never put it down. I think she kind of just like sat me down one day and was like, all right, like we're going to try this out and like sit you down in front of some canvas and try to find you like a little hobby. And then for some reason I just fell in love with it and I never stopped. Painting and art has always been a part of my life, and it's always been something that it's sort of the way that I express my own soul, and my own kind of emotions and my own journey. And I sort of stumbled upon painting spirit guides when I was, oh my gosh, I think I had just graduated high school. And my mom was kind of hosting a class, and she teaches classes, and she writes books, and she does all these kinds of like wonderful, amazing things. And she was teaching a class, and I was assisting in one of her classes because that was something that I sort of did on the weekends, for fun and just to kind of help out and be around the energy. And I was her assistant one weekend, and I was doing a spirit guide reading in class, and the woman just was so moved by this reading. She loved it so much, and she happened to see my art and was like, you know what? Can you paint this for me? Can you make that so I can see it? Because I want to see it. She's like, I can see it so vividly in my mind, but I want to be able to like hold onto it and have something where I can, have as a memory. I can capture this. I can hang it on my wall. I can revisit this experience and remember what it means to me, and kind of have that connection to my spirit guide much more easily without having to sit down and meditate and then remember. Like you can just look at this piece of paper and this painting and be like, yeah, that's my guide right there. And I was like, oh my God, like, of course, like, just out of high school thinking like I'm painting for somebody, like feeling like a fancy artist, like someone just commissioned me to paint a piece of wood for so it was very flattering. And that's kind of how I started off, I guess, and then other people in class heard about it. And then, a few of my mom's friends had heard about it. And then, she sat me down one day and was like, okay, you should do this. You should pursue this. And I was really resistant at first, actually. It's funny when I tell this story because I was so resistant. I wanted to be like, but Mom, like my friends aren't doing this. Like, this isn't like a cool thing, And I guess over time, it's funny because I grew to love it. And I saw how much it helped people and how great I felt afterwards too. It's really such a gift for me to be able to share what I see with other people and then also help them connect to their own spirit guides. And that's something I always say too, like you don't need me to connect to your spirit guides. I think that I'm a great, if you're not really good at being able to see it, I'm a great like facilitator to sort of help you get there. But ultimately what I want you to be doing is connecting with them as well. It's your team. I want you to be able to see them and connect with them. So yeah, I mean, that was kind of my journey of learning how to paint them and see them. And it kind of just, I guess it was one of those things that was meant to be, but I've learned how to embrace it over the years for sure.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And I'm sure it feels great to see the difference that, that your gifts are make in people's lives, because, it really does. I mean, I don't know, like being on the other side of it, how you feel, because you're the giver, but, for those of us that, are able to experience that, I mean, it definitely is. It's very a hopeful thing, right? It gives you hope that there's more to this life than just the what we see in front of us.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I always say this too, and I think people are kind of like, "Oh, really? Is it though?" And I'm like, genuinely, it's such a gift for me. I don't know if it's just being able to connect with the energy myself and seeing how it affects other people. Of course, that's an amazing gift, but just kind of tapping into that and feeling that energy. I mean, it is kind of connecting to that source energy, whether you want to call it God or the universe or whatever name you call it. It's that bigger consciousness. So it's always a treat for me. And Every reading's different, and I feel like every person that I help also helps me. I feel like I'm also kind of learning vicariously through the people that I'm looking for. So I also get the benefits. So not to kind of, toot my own horn or anything, but it's such an amazing thing for me to also be able to experience that. So I'm always very grateful. Very grateful. Very grateful. Very grateful.
So you were kind of talking about this in your last in what you were just sharing with us, but so I think it is important for people to learn how to connect with spirit guides, and I know when I first kind of came into my spiritual, started coming into my, let me just say, started on a spiritual journey. I really wanted to learn how to connect with my spirit guides. But even still today, I haven't fully developed my psychic abilities. When I'm facilitating a Reiki healing for somebody, I will get some things that come through, but I'm by no means, like you or your mom or any of the other gifted psychics that are out there. And I always felt like, because I haven't developed those abilities, that I'm not going to be able to connect with my guides, like you or others with your gift. So do you have any recommendations for people who are listening in who haven't developed these types of psychic abilities? How can they connect with their spirit guides?
It's kind of funny you say that too, because I feel like we come into this world so open, and then as we kind of get older and like go through the process of being in society and what society tells you, we're always, not all of us, of course, but a lot of us kind of close down a little bit. And I think that's always there. That always stays with us. It's just learning how to tap into that. And I think everyone's trying so hard too. We're always trying to I need to develop and I need to work on it. And I have to work it like a muscle. And it's funny because it's almost one of the easiest things in the world. It's really just releasing. It's almost like meditation. People are always trying to meditate. And it's like, you don't try to meditate. You just meditate. You just be. You just exist. And at least that's been my experience. And that's what's sort of helped me connect. Working with spirit guides, I kind of just sit down and I open my energy and I look for what's there and I say what I see and I just let it come to me. One thing that I can definitely recommend for helping with this, especially when it comes to visualization, I would say is, meditation has been something that helps me kind of tap in. I think that's something that sort of across the board is going to help a lot of different people. But also kind of knowing what your signs and signals are too, maybe requesting from your guides, hey, can I request, I want to see a bumblebee, something simple, a bumblebee is a great one, where they can sort of send it to you just as validation that they're listening and that they're there for you. But, just being open and present, being present is something that's extremely important, because I find that so many amazing experiences happen when you're just sort of in the flow. And I think it helps for them to kind of connect in that way too. We're not trying to control the situation, or we're not trying to force it. We're not trying to call them on their end. It's literally just keeping the line open and allowing them to speak with us when they need to.
So you mentioned opening, you like to open up your energy. What does that mean?
Oh gosh, how do I explain this? Okay. Opening energy. So really just, kind of, I think over time, a lot of people that I've worked with anyways have expressed to me that they feel like they have these walls that they've sort of built up, and, walls of protection, especially with spirituality. I think spirituality is such a sensitive topic, and such a personal topic as well. It's something that we hold very near and dear to our hearts. I think just, opening up that energy and sort of dropping those walls and allowing yourself to just kind of, be in the moment, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, I think it absolutely makes sense. And I think, I think that's definitely, I think that kind of goes along with what you said a little bit earlier about blocks.
Yes. Oh gosh, blocks and old belief patterns and old programs. That's actually a great way to explain it, because, those are definitely things that can sort of hold us back. It can be belief systems from ancestors, from this lifetime, from previous lifetimes, anything like that. It's sort of just like clutter on a hard drive. When you haven't emptied that trash bin in a while, it starts to get full and it starts making your computer a bit slow. We want to delete those old programs and clear up that space so that we can have that fresh memory for us to start restoring and putting in some better stuff, some better belief systems and more positive things that can help us in our journeys.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I had an experience on, and this is the only way I know this, but I had this experience on sacred medicine where I literally experienced all of the layers of the proverbial onion kind of just peel off, and whatever that was there was just the core of who I am as a spirit, as a soul, and consciously I experienced what that felt like, and and from that, it was interesting because I was able to juxtapose like how I normally am versus how I was in those moments, and it's interesting because we don't realize on a day-to-day basis just how much crap we carry around, and that we have these layers that we've built up over time, like film, like just this film that just covers us and wraps us and makes it really hard for us to experience life the way we would if those layers were gone and we were just our pure sort of soul self, our energy, our energetic being just there. And it was really interesting because it's like, wow, like, oh my God, like, A, this experience is amazing, but B, do I have some work I need to do to kind of get to a place where I can feel like this all of the time? And maybe, maybe it's not about feeling like that all of the time, but, we talk about blocks and you talk about limiting beliefs and limiting things. It was just a really eye-opening experience. And sometimes it's hard to really sort of understand what that is if you haven't experienced what it's like to be without it, And so, but that's no joke. That's really no joke. There's a lot of work that needs to be, in a lot of cases, that needs to be done. And so I love what you said about asking for a sign, because I feel like that can be sometimes the crack in the door for people to kind of start letting go, is to experience something, right? Because it's kind of like, I don't want to eat that food because it's gross, right? Like sushi. Like, I don't want to eat sushi. Fish, I'm going to eat fish. And then you taste it once, you're like, oh, you know what? That wasn't as bad as I made it out to be. Maybe I'll have it again. And so I love you. It's a terrible analogy, but I love your point on. So if you're asking for a sign, right? Yeah. Do you recommend asking for something that is really obscure, or because like if and this is an extreme, but if I'm like, okay, spirit guide, I want you to show me a pink elephant. That's how I'm going to know that you're listening to me. And like the odds on me ever seeing a pink elephant walk in front of a car, granted, I may see it, at a store or something, a pink stuffed elephant, but it's definitely maybe not as common as saying in your example of seeing the bumblebee, right? So like, is there like a level, like, and I know I'm getting really granular here, but like, what would you recommend in terms of a sign? Like, is there, because you want it to happen, right? You don't want to ask for something that's just so obscure you'll never see it, or maybe you do. I don't know.
That's a really interesting question, because I hadn't really thought of it that way. I always kind of recommend more common signs, because I feel like it's easier for, if it's more frequent, it's easier for a spirit guide to send it to you. And it can happen in any way. It can be on a greeting card. It can be on someone's t-shirt. It can be someone's name. Maybe someone's named B, and they happen to talk to you and they say, hi, my name is B. And you're like, oh my gosh, B, that's my sign that I've been looking for. So things like that have happened to me in the past. But something obscure too, I think people try to make it so obscure because they're sometimes, it depends on the person, but sometimes they're like, it needs to be this specific thing exactly, or it's not real. And I think that's where it kind of becomes a problem, because a big part of them being able to communicate to us is through us sort of having that trust and having that faith that it is meant for us. Something that happened to me recently, actually, it's funny because I was asking for a sign myself, believe it or not. I have a friend of mine that I had some questions about, and I kind of needed some guidance with a situation. And I was like, all right, well, we have this song, and this song is called Wonderwall. And if I hear that song, I'll give them a call and check in on them. And I'm waiting, of course my ears are open and I'm flipping through radio stations in the car. And I'm almost like looking for it, right? Because I kind of want to hear the song, and I'm like, okay, was that the song? No, that wasn't it. Okay, it's fine. And then every time I, turn on the music in my house, I'll turn on Pandora, and I'm like, was that the song? And whatever. Finally, it's out of my mind. It's been a few weeks. I'm like, all right, clearly I'm not going to hear it. It's not meant to be. I've let it go. I'm not thinking about it. I'm not searching for it. I'm not pushing the energy. So I go to a restaurant with my friend of mine, and we end up getting some fancy drinks. And on the menu, one of the drinks that I'm looking at, and I'm not reading the names of the drinks. I'm just trying to figure out what's in them. Because I'm like, all right, that sounds yummy. That sounds fancy. Like chocolate? What? I'm definitely going to drink that. And the name of one of them was Here's Wonderwall. And it took me a minute, and then my jaw just dropped, and I was like, that was for me. That was my sign. I didn't hear it. I didn't hear it on the radio, but like the names of the drinks were so random. That was the only one that was named after a song. And such a random song for me personally, because I don't, hear that song very often. And that was a sign, so I think it's really subjective to the person, and you have to be kind of open to it. You can't force it. You can't push it. And trying to put it in a box and trying to make sense of it too is kind of an issue, in the long run. So I think just kind of putting it out to the universe, saying if it's meant to be, it'll be. And if you get that sign, then that's what it's meant to be.
That's really cool. And by the way, Wonderwall is a damn cool song. One of my favorites.
It's a
great. Yeah. I there's been many times in the car where I've almost lost my voice singing along to it.
Love it.
Oh, so probably the most important question is, did you order the Wonderwall?
I did. I did.
And was it good? Like, was it as good as the song, and was it in a drink form?
Oh gosh, I don't think anything's as good as that song, honestly. But it was pretty close. It was pretty dang close. I'm not gonna lie. It was a good drink.
Well, this has been such an awesome conversation, and I feel like we've really covered a lot, and we've talked about spirit guides and spirit guides. There's so much more we could talk about. We could talk about animal guides and different forms of spirit guides that exist, and totems and all that good stuff. But maybe at some point we'll come back and do a part 2, or we'll talk about something else. But Loni, I want to ask you before we head out. It's hard to believe we've been talking almost 50 minutes already, but is there anything you would like to promote and share with our audience? Like, what are you up to? What do you've got going on? Any offers you want to put out there to those listening in? The mic is yours.
Well, this is going to be going up January. Is that correct?
In January, whatever the first Wednesday of January is. So maybe the 3rd or 4th.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm doing spirit guides and spirit guide paintings, readings and paintings, as always. That's something that I'm always kind of doing. Something that's sort of a newer venture for me is goddess paintings, which it's a little bit more of a process, a collaborative process when it comes to creation, because what I'm doing is I'm connecting with women or men. I haven't worked with any men yet, but it could be god paintings or goddess, whatever it is, whatever you feel you want me to paint for you, I am totally down for it. But basically what I'm doing is I'm connecting with your energy and how you view yourself in the best light. So primarily so far, I've worked with women who want to see themselves as these amazing, strong, confident figures, and just see themselves as these amazing goddesses that they already are in real life, but have it kind of in a painting form where they can look at that and be like, yeah, that's me. Like, I'm kind of awesome. Like, I am a cool person, and I'm tough, and I'm strong, and I'm beautiful, and I'm confident, and I'm all these amazing things. And it's just kind of a reminder to like see that and remember that that's who you are inside, So I get to have the opportunity to paint these women in these ways where I get to actually paint them as goddesses, which is cool. And whatever that means to you, I've done kind of a mermaidy one so far. I did one with a moon, and it's this beautiful kind of snow scene. And I'm actually working on one right now that's going to have like a raven in the background. And, it's very individualized to the person that I'm working with, which is kind of a cool experience for me because I'm always painting something very unique and very different to the person. So that's something that I'm doing right now. But I think that's pretty much it as far as any special offers or special things that I'm working on.
So how would someone get a hold of you if they would like to schedule a painting or a reading? How does someone find you?
Yeah. Well, so far it's been through Facebook. But I can also do email. I like to have things written down because as much as I'm a reader and I'm an artist, which means I'm always kind of like in and out. So if I don't have it written down in front of me, there's a good chance that I'm not going to remember. So having it written down in an email, I can always kind of like reflect upon it and then write it down in my notes and then make sure that everything stays a little bit more organized and more grounded on my end. So yeah, email and Facebook, those are great ways to contact me.
Okay, cool. And so just to force all of you who are listening to this podcast to go to Loni's or to Loni's podcast page on spiritwoke.com, I'm going to put her email address and her Facebook address and her website address on the page. So the only way you're going to find it is, well, I guess you could search Facebook, but that would be cheating. So so go to spiritwoke.com, and if you don't see Loni Palm's episode on the homepage, just search for her name. You'll find it, and you'll find all of her contact information. You'll see an example of the spirit guide painting that Loni did for me, and you'll be able to access, again, this podcast episode anytime you want. You'll have a direct link to it. And so I guess that's about it. So Loni, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Spirit Woke podcast.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. This is such a blast.
Yeah, this was way too much fun, and I hope I hope that we get to do this again in the near future.
Oh, for sure. I'm totally down.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Well, until we speak again, be well, and I look forward to connecting on the next Spirit Woke podcast. Go find us on Facebook. We're there too. So facebook.com/official Spirit Woke. And we will talk next time. Be well, y'all.
Thanks for listening to the Spirit Woke podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to check out our website, spiritwoke.com, and connect with the Spirit Woke community on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search Spirit Woke. Join us next time for another edition of the Spirit Woke podcast. Namaste.